Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Friends, welcome to the Encounter program. I'm Mark Kimpland. I'm the pastor of the Endwell United Methodist Church. It's great to be with you today. Today, as we begin our program, it is my absolute delight to welcome to the show my brother Sam Rotz, who is the new Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministries at the Endwell United Methodist Church. Sam, welcome to the area.
Thank you.
And welcome aboard. We're glad to have you here. What we try to do with the Encounter program from time to time is to welcome people who are new to the area, new pastors, new director of youth ministries and children's ministries, and I've kind of been along this path with you since the beginning, but I'd like to have the folks that are watching this morning know more about you and your passion for youth ministry and just a little bit about what makes you tick. So why don't we start here? Why don't we start with sharing a little bit about your family background? Can you say about where you've come from, your family roots and all of that, and that way we'll kind of get started that way. So I'll let you take over from here.
Well, Mark, I'm an adopted Korean American. I came here in 1988. Let's see, my family is in New Jersey for the most part. Well, my mom and my father are in New Jersey, Haddonfield, New Jersey, and my sister is a junior at the University of Tennessee. We're very close. I'm very close to my extended family also. We're scattered all throughout the East Coast. From Pittsburgh to Florida, Maryland, and I have a cousin, Jill, who is currently serving in the U.S. Navy, so she's in Spain. So we get together for most holidays, and yeah.
Wonderful. Now, I have had the opportunity to meet your parents a few times and such things. Can you say a little bit about what they do in New Jersey and such things, and a little bit about their background also? Well,
my father's a lawyer. My mom was a teacher, and it's funny because my father is originally from Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, so we're down there most holidays, and I feel like it's a second home. I actually kind of feel more in tune with the kind of the country culture from Chambersburg than I do in New Jersey in a lot of ways. You know, they're very nice people, and you know that attitude is kind of like it had a great deal of influence on me during my childhood and later years.
Can you say a little bit about that? How that influenced you as a young man, and now in youth ministry? How did that? Was it a church? Was it the school? Was it the people? Was it a combination of everything that kind of formed who you are today?
Well, I mean, the people in Chambersburg and the people I grew up with in New Jersey were very faithful people, and I grew up at going back, I grew up attending Haddonfield United Methodist Church in Haddonfield, New Jersey. We had a youth group of about 100 kids, and I started going in 8th grade, and they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I mean, I had people really took care of me. People invested in me, and it was a huge part of who I am today. And I'm always looking for that kind of feeling, and I like to try to invest in people like they invested in me.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. You are a graduate from Eastern University. Tell me a little bit about your college experience, and was that a good experience, and what your major and other things that you may have studied?
I graduated from Eastern University in 2012. I graduated with a degree in youth ministry and a degree in history with a couple minors attached, but those are kind of irrelevant. Okay. And the youth ministry program, I actually went to Eastern specifically for the youth ministry program, which is, in my opinion, one of the superior programs for youth ministry in the country. I had a lot of friends who went to Eastern growing up, and I kind of looked up to them, and I saw how, what they were doing with their ministry when they came back. So I really wanted to pursue that. I'd wanted to pursue that for some time, and I learned it was very hard at first because just going to college my freshman year, but through that, through that afterwards, we had a lot of very practical stuff that we learned, and I worked at it. I worked part-time at a church all throughout college, and what was nice is I was able to put those elements that I had learned almost like the day before into practical experience the next day, and I think that was a huge part of being grounded in youth ministry. Well, at least I view that I'm grounded in youth ministry. And I also had a history major. I chose a history major as opposed to you could do a Bible major or a theology major or minors attached to it. It was part of it. But I did a Christian studies minor, and then I did a history major, and I concentrated mostly in European history. I found it fascinating, or the early church, Orthodox history, Catholic history. The Protestant Reformation, because when you learn theology and philosophy in college, you learn it from a very philosophical point, and I'm not that way. So what I did is I learned it through their words, through the words of John Calvin or John Wesley, or Francis of Assisi, or and I was able to actually learn by literally reading their words a lot about their theology and my understanding of them, and that was a huge influence in my life, and it still is.
Okay, great. You do have United Methodist background and such things, and I know that we were talking before we came on air here that I wanted to have you share a little bit, knowing that you had that education at Eastern University and such things, and you took the theology classes and history and such things. Can you just share with the folks that are viewing, what's the foundation theologically with you? Can you just kind of share what your basic tenets of theology are, your what's poignant theologically, spiritually in your life as you begin this work in this area?
Theologically, I think that I kind of like what I told you about the history major, I turned it into something very practical. My goal with theology, my goal with God in general is to do the best that I can. What I mean is that I try to emulate Christ as much as I can.
Yes.
And I try to do the most practical things to help every other person, to try to be selfless. Whether or not that works all the time is up for debate.
Yes.
But I don't enjoy getting. I know how to talk about theology. I can discuss philosophy. It's intriguing, but to convict other people, that's not me.
Okay.
Because the thing is, God is so vast and reaches out to so many people, even in the Bible. God was talking in the Old Testament to people who were not necessarily Jews.
Yeah.
It's time and time again. It's it's proven that God can use anyone. So I can't say for certain. There are certain things that I absolutely believe, like Jesus Christ, died, to save us. But for the most part, I won't argue semantics.
Right.
Because God is so much more vast than we are. And I try to instill kind of an attitude of openness and learning with the youth, to challenge everything as opposed to learn one thing and then argue against everything else.
Yeah, good point. It sounds like you're a witness of that, to be Christ-light, and where that shakes out, that's not for us to decide. Why youth ministry? This is you're 25 years old, and that has been a passion of yours for a long time. Can you explain why youth ministry? Why not another form of ministry? Why specifically do you feel that you were called to youth ministry? Why the deep passion and excitement for that?
My youth minister growing up was his name was Dan Stevens, and he was a very pivotal part of my childhood. My mother had cancer when I was in 8th grade, and it was rough, and he was there for me, and she did survive it, and so we went to this. My youth minister said I should go to this retreat called Midwinter Advance, or Keswick, and I was like, okay, whatever, and so I went, and there was an altar call on Saturday night, and I remember there was a team from the Midwinter Advance is led by college teams, and there was an altar call by the Eastern University Keswick team, and I remember I felt the overwhelming need to go up, and I prayed to God, and I at the time I wouldn't say I was depressed, but I was definitely shut my emotions off in order to guard myself. And so for like half a year, I had felt like nothing. It felt like there was like a lead brick, kind of guarding my heart. And it was horrible. And I prayed to God, and I said, Lord, I will serve you if you remove this, from me. And then in that instant, it just cracked. It felt like a dam, like breaking, and like all the emotion came back. And I realized at that moment, I was like, I realized, oh man, I made a promise, and it took, probably till around my junior year to figure out what, I wanted to, where God was leading me. And
right.
Like I said, people from Eastern had a big influence in my life, and I definitely felt called that way, and that's how I entered youth ministry. It really is something that I've geared myself towards my entire life.
Okay.
And it's what I don't imagine myself doing anything else in the near future.
Okay. But you knew by your junior year in high school, you were convicted, you were called, that somehow you were going to move down this path and such things. So you find yourself here now in September of 2014 at the Endwell United Methodist Church. We're glad to have you on board and excited about all the potential that is here. But now that you've been here for a full month and a half and such things, what do you see as the biggest challenges in youth ministry today? If there's folks that are out there watching this that are part of a youth ministry team or in a church that doesn't have a youth ministry program, what are some of the challenges that you see? You have a unique perspective being a young adult yourself with the youth. What are some of their challenges that you see that are so paramount today?
Well, for the youth, some people will say, the kids are getting lazy and all that. I would disagree. I think that for the challenge for youth is that there's too much going on. The amount that they're asked to keep up with is 20 times that of previous generations. Things were simpler. There weren't computers. There weren't Xbox, but that's not attacking those things. Those actually can be integrated into youth ministry successfully. But for youth as a whole, there's more stuff academically. There's more, and there's more stuff on the home front. There's 50% divorce rate. There's the increase in abuse or drug use or all those things. Drugs are more readily available than they've ever been, and that's a huge battle. And that brings it back to the youth director, the youth minister, the volunteer. How would they ever hope to battle that? And it's a very good question, because not every church can afford a full-time youth minister,
sure,
and part-time or even a part-time youth minister, but that's not the requirement for a youth minister. And I think that the challenge for someone who would want to volunteer and get started is just to be brave. Youth ministry requires you just got to jump in. And then of course you have to be organized.
Sure.
You got to be brave. You got to be organized, and you have to be. And you have to have faith in what you're doing, and I have a conviction. But and a passion, because you can't solve these problems,
right? And
people will solve them themselves, but you just walk on the journey with them. Right. You can't. Right. It's kind of like growing stuff, like in a garden. Say your corn's growing. You can't tell that corn to grow any faster, and say it starts growing in a different direction other than straight up. Right. Well, you can put something next to it to make it grow straighter, but that doesn't mean it's going to grow.
Right.
And just like kids are not going to necessarily do what we would like. Otherwise, the world would be perfect, and there would be white, and then we wouldn't need parenting.
Yeah.
But I would encourage all churches to have some sort of youth ministry, even if it's once a month with 2 or 3 volunteers going out getting pizza, bowling. The solution to what I was just talking about is relationships. Relationships are pivotal because it's something that's lacking. So I'm not attacking social media, but social media, just the distancing of people where they can communicate from this end to that end without ever talking to each other. The idea of even email, it makes things less personal.
Yes.
It destroys the idea of relationship. Divorce rates, all those things are all destroying relationships, and so that's really where the youth minister and the people who are in the church really have to invest in the youth, because kids have trust issues. They don't know what's going to be there the next day.
Absolutely. One of the things that you said early on that really formed your faith and foundation was the term that's been coined. It does take a community, to raise a child and such. And what I see so many times is in the church environment that we'll leave youth ministry to the director of youth and those people who help. I guess my question to you is, with this idea of having a community raise these youth up, what else could church members, just the person who decides to come and worship and such things, are there pearls of wisdom that you can share with them? They may not be active within the youth ministry program, but they see the youth on Sunday, that they can have a hand and a part. Are there specific things that those people could be doing? I'm sure praying for them would be paramount and such things, but are there other more tangible things that you can think of that you've seen happen in other youth groups, or that you might be looking to do, in this area also, so that it would be not just youth ministry as these 3 people, but the youth ministry as the church? Is there anything practical, words of wisdom you can share on that?
Invest in any way you can. When I was growing up, before I was in a youth group, I used to do this thing called the new member dinner on I guess it was the 3rd Wednesday of every month. Well, it was dinner for the new members, but I worked with members of the congregation that were much older than me, in their 60s and stuff like that. And I remember them just they brought me little gifts. That wasn't really important, but and they just talked to me. They asked me how my day was, and a couple of them have passed away since then, and I miss them, and they were a huge part of my life. But sorry.
That's.
But just that investment, that hey Sam, how are you? All that stuff was just very. This is my church. This is my family. So if just ask them how their day was. That's marvelous.
And I just have to take this time for a little side note on my faith journey also. That is the only reason I am a pastor today. I grew up at Andrews Memorial United Methodist Church in North Syracuse. I was the kid you did not want in your Sunday school class. I was a hellion. I was very hyper. I was all over the place and such things. But even through that, even through junior high and high school, when I was involved in sports, people would come to me, put their arm around me and say, hey, saw you play the other night, you did this. Just cared enough. It was that relationship, and that nurtured me among the years I was struggling. So I relate to exactly what you're saying. In this community, what excites you as it deals with youth ministry? What do you see? What have you felt? I know you've been out and about. You've made a connection with a lot of people. You've made contacts with a lot of the local churches and a lot of people within the community. What excites you as you take a step back and you look at Broome County and you look at this area and such things? What excites you about what you see as you roll your sleeves up?
Well, there's 2 things. Number one, people are excited. People, if they will jump on board, and if they get really excited about it and they have a passion for it and they're willing to invest in it. That's not always the case.
Okay.
There have been times where I've had very little support from, the youth ministry is the youth ministry. We give you money, and then you're on your own, and then so it's always very lonely.
Yes.
It's not part of being in community. So I have more support and more enthusiasm than I know what to do with, which is fantastic. The second thing would be that it's untapped. There's the youth ministry in this area, for better or for worse, is it's not super active, which is good because that means I don't have that much competition, and I have a lot of room to explore and try new things. But there's a flip side of that, which means there's no youth ministry in there.
Right. So, looking at all the untapped resources and the potential and all of that, what have you come across early on in this ministry? What's been your biggest challenge? What's been the biggest hurdle so far that you're looking to overcome, or the things that have cropped up that you may have been aware of or you may not have been aware of? What have been the challenges so far as you begin your work here in this community?
Well, this is typical for anyone who's in youth ministry, but sports. It's not something that I can even bother to compete with. I actually integrate myself. I just go to their games and stuff like that. It becomes part of the ministry. But that is definitely the biggest roadblock, because sports are just so huge here.
Yes.
And so I've got to support rather than battle it. That's not going to happen. That's been a huge thing for me.
How have you found effective ways of doing that? Because extracurricular activities, you just said that there's a lot on the plate with our youth today, from academics to extracurricular activities to sports to you name it and such things. How do you overcome that and make the church still relevant to them when the society is saying that it's not relevant, that what we do is more relevant? How do you deal with that? What techniques have you developed over the years, or perhaps that you engaged in when you were in youth group?
I choose to immerse myself into that culture as opposed to try to separate it or even combine it, because it's its own entity.
Yeah.
Sports are sports. This is lacrosse season. This is swimming season. This is track season. So I just become part of it. I become a fan, and it makes an impact on the youth seeing me there and me coming out. And not me, but representing the church, and it's all glory to God for that. It's part of His creation. So I don't think I should fight it.
Yeah, absolutely, embrace it. Absolutely. Over my years in ministry, I've heard so many people just be so pessimistic about our kids aren't here and such things. And I think one of the most fruitful ministries I ever launched was a ministry of sending 2 or 3 people out to the Pop Warner football games. And little Joey and Johnny saw them there, and they'd give them a candy bar after the game and such things, and the church kind of being out in the world and such. Being a part of the interview committee that brought you to this area, and we were so excited to have you as we went through this idea of you becoming the director of youth ministry. We also incorporated young adult ministry also, and I want to just spend a few our remaining last few moments here talking about that, because that is a very, very unique ministry to have that 18 to 30-year-old demographic and such things, because one of the things that I see constantly in churches is the idea of there are no children, where are the kids? And that's in direct correlation to where are the young adults. They're the ones that have the kids. As you begin your work in there, and that still is going to be launched here as we move forward, what do you see as the major challenges in launching that with the young adult ministries, with those that are perhaps in college, those that are newly married or in a new vocation and such things, those with young children? What do you see as some of the challenges that lie ahead for you in this community launching a ministry like that?
You just named them. It's all of those things, and scheduling. How do you find something that, common ground that, it's broken up, basically college or college age, and then career, what I call career, which is 23 to 35, but there's still a lot of difference between a 23-year-old and a 35-year-old. So it's finding that common ground and finding the right people to put together. And that's not always easy, but it's totally worth doing because it's a ministry that's underutilized. Across the board, unless you're near a major college campus, which we happen to be, it's typically underutilized, and it's something I had a lot of time to look over young adult ministries. There was a small group that I was part of, young adult group that really inspired me back at home, and they're the amount of effort that they put into their their young adult ministry really has changed my perspective on how important it was. I was on the back burner for a while, but you know, it's fairly important.
Right. So really intentionality. I mean, to be intentional about it, because one of the things that you said that is spot on. It doesn't matter whether you're a child, a youth, a young adult, middle-aged, senior, whatever. It's all about relationship. How do we bring people into relationship with one another and with God? That really is how you do it. And you're right, from college to starting your career to starting a family, there's all different issues there, but everyone's screaming, and at least I feel that, spiritually screaming for relationship, to kind of know one another at a deeper level other than just, hi, how are you today, kind of thing. Well, we have just a few moments and then we need to wrap up, Sam, but this has been an absolute pleasure being with you in such things, and we're glad that you are on board. For those that are watching today, this program, or listening to it on the radio, could you just share your contact information? How would someone, if they want to bounce some ideas, come on board with you, whatever it is, maybe have a cup of coffee with you to glean some of your expertise? How would one get in touch with you? What would be the best way to do that?
Well, all of my information is on endwellumc.com. That's our church website. But also my email address is srotz@eastern.edu. It's my old college address. I would love to answer any questions that people have about youth ministry. Come and talk to them. Creating youth ministry and expanding God's word is a huge thing. So.
Great. Well, let's end with this, and I'll give you like about a 20-second last word. We've covered a lot of ground here, from welcoming you to talking about youth ministry and young adult ministry. Is there any one pearl of wisdom, one thing that you'd like to just leave the folks that are watching this with as it deals with these ministries and going forward? Could you just take about 15 seconds and just one pearl of wisdom that you'd like to share with those that are watching this program about this ministry?
Yeah, it's actually for the pastors who are watching this. If you don't have a youth group, I think you should get one. Even Jesus had a youth group. It's called the 12 Disciples. And his group was kind of rough. One of his kids wanted to kill him. So but it was still a youth ministry.
Yes, yeah. Dive in.
Yep.
And it's scary, it's hopeful, it's wonderful. So Sam, thank you so much for being a part of this. And on behalf of the Broome County Council of Churches, I've enjoyed having you with us this morning as we welcome our brother Sam. May God bless you in all that you do this day and all your days. Have a good day.